Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into a video that's been making some serious waves online. It asks a really tough, kind of provocative question about why so many cities in Africa look the way they do. So let's break down its arguments piece by piece.
So right out of the gate, the video does not pull any punches. It just puts this question right in front of you, showing images of neglect next to these clean, modern cities, and it basically asks, what is going on here? Why this massive difference?
And this contrast is really the foundation of the video's whole case. It argues that cities from Onitsha to Nairobi, they all share these common problems, haphazard planning, open gutters, not enough basic stuff like pavements or trees. This is the setup for the big argument that's coming.
Okay, so why? What's the reason for all this? Well, the video immediately goes after the excuse you hear all the time that African nations just need more time and more money. The video sets out to prove that's just not the real issue. Then this timeline is how the source tries to just take that argument apart. It points out that the average African country is over 60 years old. That's actually older than the UAE. Then it shows you countries like Japan and Germany, who rebuilt everything from scratch in under 30 years. So the video lands this really heavy question. Why hasn't 60 years been enough time?
And to really hit that lack of money argument, the video drops this pretty shocking fact. Back in the 80s, some African economies were actually doing better than countries we now think of as global powerhouses. The point they're making is, look, the potential was there, the resources were there, so what happened?
So if the video says it's not about time or money, then what is the problem? And that brings us to the real heart of the video's argument. It basically says, okay, let's stop looking outside for answers and start looking inside.
So what are those internal problems? Well, according to the video, it all comes down to these things. It points a finger at poor leadership, a culture where things just aren't maintained, widespread corruption, and deep social divisions. It even calls out what it calls misplaced priorities, where all this energy goes into arguments instead of actually building the nation.
And this is probably one of the most controversial points in the whole video. It's basically claiming that since independence, most of the big, important stuff, highways, airports, railways, it's still being built by foreign companies. This is a huge part of its argument about internal problems.
Okay, so to try and prove these points, the video starts showing you these really stark contrasts. These case studies are meant to show that it's leadership and productivity that matter way more than just having resources or a big population. Rwanda is the video's star witness, it's their prime example. They argue that even though Rwanda is landlocked, doesn't have a lot of resources, and has a smaller economy, it has one of the cleanest, most organized cities on the continent in Kigali. And the video's take is that this all comes down to one thing: leadership.
Then the video kind of switches gears to take on another big idea, that Africa's huge growing population is its greatest asset. It asks a pretty pointed question. Is a huge population always a good thing, or could it actually be a problem if it's not productive?
And to really drive this home, they show you this comparison that is just, wow. You've got Switzerland with only 8 million people creating way more economic value than the entire West African region of almost 500 million people. The message is pretty blunt. It's about productivity, not just numbers. And they hammer this point home again. They put up Taiwan, an island with hardly any natural resources and only 23 million people, and claim it's richer than all of resource-rich West Africa combined. So the argument here is that it's not about what you have in the ground, it's about what you do with it. It's about management and human capital. And this is where it all builds to, the final and honestly the most incendiary part of the whole argument. It takes all these observations about development and connects them to something much, much darker: global respect.
Yeah, this is a direct quote, and it doesn't get more blunt than this. The video argues that the disrespect people might feel from the rest of the world, it isn't just about someone else's prejudice. Some of it, they argue, is a self-inflicted wound, a direct result of the visible state of these cities.
Now, we have to be super clear here. This is the video's own very, very controversial way of framing it. They try to say, hey, this isn't about skin color, but about what they describe as a failure to apply intellect to create societies that are as well managed as in other parts of the world. It's a shocking claim that directly links perceived inaction to a loss of global standards.
And so that's where the video leaves you. After tearing down all the common excuses, laying out its own internal diagnosis, and drawing this straight line to global disrespect, it just turns the question back on you. It's a deliberately provocative ending for sure, meant to force a really difficult conversation. And it leaves us thinking, what's the difference between harsh, uncomfortable criticism
and a necessary wake-up call.